Welcome back, America. David M. Drucker on Twitter is with the Washington Examiner. You see him everywhere. He is also going to know what's going on inside the knucklehead caucus led by Matt Gaetz. David, I have put forward the proposition that the omnibus, which was agreed to in the Senate last night, $1.7 billion, is preferable to the Republicans in the Senate than coming back and trying to avert a shutdown with a House in chaos, which Matt Gaetz has brought about. So I'm blaming Gaetz. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right in this regard, Hugh. The idea that House Republicans are going to be able to agree amongst themselves early next year on a massive spending bill, and then be able to leverage that with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic White House, those prospects are extremely low. We've seen House Republicans have trouble unifying among themselves on spending bills when they had very big majorities, and here they're going to have a 4 or 5 seat majority. And the idea that they're going to agree and be able to use that unity to squeeze Schumer in the Senate, Biden in the White House, it just doesn't make sense that they are going to be able to do that in large part. Although, again, they've had trouble with large majorities, in large part because they can't even agree to get behind Kevin McCarthy, who, although it wasn't unanimous, they had an internal caucus vote. He had the most votes for Speaker by far. His competitor is somebody who could never win in any universe I could imagine. And so, Senate Republicans look at that, and they say to themselves, we don't want to be dragged into a situation where our party, as far as the public is concerned, has forced a shutdown. Because the party that forces shutdowns always loses. Democrats tried it with Trump, they lost. Republicans tried it under Trump, they lost. And it's just not going to work.
And so I go back to, if you wanted to have the Republicans negotiate from strength in the new Congress with 49 Republicans in the Senate, that would have been possible, but they will end up in a shutdown because they can't even organize the Congress. They can't pass anything. And so this is all Matt Gaetz's fault. But I want to ask you about Matt Rosendale. I don't know Matt Rosendale. I don't get involved in Senate primaries, but he's part of the Gang of Five, the knucklehead caucus, I call him, led by Gaetz. I'm beginning to think Rosendale is destroying his own chances for the Senate here, and I don't think there's a base big enough to cover this. Do you?
Well, look, the committed Republican base is about a third of the party at any given time, and it's not enough to win a majority in a general election, hold a majority, or govern. And so if you're playing to the base because you want to win a primary, in a closed primary, you might be able to pull that out. I covered Rosendale's Senate race in 2018. He was not able to beat John Tester. Granted, it was a good Democratic year, but Montana's a plus 20 Republican state in presidential elections usually. So I'm not sure what Rosendale's long game plan is here, given that running in a Senate contest against John Tester is going to take more than just winning a primary. But I think these guys have to figure out what exactly their goal is. If their goal is simply to block McCarthy and then stand down, it might not be smart, but it's rational. If they have other goals in mind here, I'm not sure how they plan to convince the majority of the House Republican caucus conference, which does not agree with them by any stretch of the imagination, to do things they want from a position ultimately of weakness other than they have the votes to mess with Speaker's vote.
So I want to go back to Rosendale because the only one I can have any kind of a theory on, because it's just so stupid. This is such a stupid, destructive act. Rosendale might think it gives him purchase versus Zinke in a primary, but I don't think it does. I think with Trump endorsing McCarthy, it doesn't help with the base of the base. I mean, there's a tenth of the Republican Party out there, as Dwayne came up with this. They're the always Trump people and the only Trump people, and the only Trump people aren't going to be happy with Matt Rosendale.
Well, that might be true. Look, I think the bigger issue for Rosendale is there are many ways to distinguish yourself as a conservative, as more conservative than your opponent. I do think that you need to think ahead in Montana. There's still a streak of libertarian pragmatism out there. They're not, especially if Tester is the Democrat running, they're not simply going to vote for Rosendale in a November election because he was the most conservative candidate in the
Right.
primary. And I don't think that he's looking at this quite the way he should. But again, I think that the bigger issue here is, how do a minority of House Republicans plan to convince a majority of their colleagues, let alone the public, to embrace their plans for insurgency? They don't seem to have one.
They don't have a plan. They don't have a
And
plan.
simply convincing the Republican base that they are right. Well, they've already done that. They did that without saying anything, because that's where the base is going to be, and that's fine. But they've got, if they cannot govern, they won't achieve anything conservative.
I agree, and they won't get, and they are screwing up the Judiciary Committee run by Jim Jordan. They're screwing up the Select Committee on China run by Mike Gallagher. They're screwing up the Armed Services, the Intel. They're screwing it all up. Matt Gaetz and his four merry pranksters are screwing it all up. David M. Drucker on the new Twitter is just like David M. Drucker on the old Twitter. Always there, always interesting. I'm coming back with Byron York, who's both on the new and the old Twitter. Don't go anywhere. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
This hour of Hugh Hewitt starts right now on Salem News Channel.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt in the second hour of today's Hugh Hewitt Show. They have shut down Beijing and Shanghai, and not because of Christmas, because of COVID. Plus, more on whether Kevin McCarthy's effort to become Speaker is gaining traction. Byron York joins me, and much more coming up in hour two of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
You won't want to miss a minute. This hour of Hugh Hewitt is on Salem News Channel.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour. Hi, candidate Hugh Hewitt inside a beltway that is suddenly devoid of Christmas parties because everyone assumes Congress would have left by now, but they haven't. In fact, last night, the Senate unveiled a $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill. Byron York of the Washington Examiner and Fox News is along now to discuss this with me. Good morning, Byron. How are you? Am I right that normally this town is deserted this week?
Good morning, Hugh. Yes, it is December 20th, and it's about time everybody would have been gone otherwise.
Now, I have put forward my theory, and it's been backed up by a couple of calls off the record, that Republicans had no choice but to cooperate with Democrats because Matt Gaetz and his merry band of knuckleheads guarantee chaos if they hold their position in January so that the government would shut down, and Mitch McConnell and the Republican senators do not want that. Have you picked that up as well? This is Gaetz's fault.
This is the Senate rationale. First of all, in a perfect world, if you're a Republican and Democrats control the Senate and Republicans control the House, you would think, well, let's hold off on spending bills until Republicans control the House because, well, at least we'll be able to make some difference, limit spending in some way, cut excess in some way because we control one house of Congress. I mean, don't you think that would be the reasonable thing to do?
Yes, and that's what they would have done.
But what the Republican senators are thinking is the House Republicans are so screwed up that when January comes, they will be engrossed in a leadership battle, and they won't be able to legislate. And they need money for the Defense Department, they need money for Ukraine, they need money for all these things. And better just to pass what Democrats want now than to wait until Kevin McCarthy is embroiled in a fight to become Speaker of the House, and the House Republican majority is totally distracted.
I want to amend and extend your remarks, Byron. It's not McCarthy and 217 Republicans with him. It's 5 Republicans who have screwed this up. And Matt Gaetz is the chairman of the Knucklehead Caucus. And I know why. Because he walked down, he's at Charlie Kirk's event, and he walked out to an adoring applause of a bunch of kids who think he's somehow other than a nut. And the monetization of eccentricity has empowered people like Matt Gaetz. But explain to me why Matt Rosendale, who wants to be a senator, thinks this is a good idea. It's a terrible idea if you want to be a senator. People will not forgive and forget over this.
The monetization of eccentricity. Now, this is where the math comes in. Obviously, right now, McCarthy has a 4-seat majority, so he can lose 4 and still win.
Correct.
And if he loses 5, he doesn't win.
Correct.
And how many knucklehead caucus members are there? There are 5. Okay, and we have some speculation that there are really 3 who are totally hardcore, and maybe a couple who might be able to negotiate their position. Now, do you think those numbers are accidental? I mean, they put together just enough to pose a mortal threat to McCarthy's speaker ambitions, but there's still the possibility that it might just be a really kind of symbolic thing, and 3 people vote against McCarthy. And by the way, voting present helps McCarthy. They don't have to actually vote for McCarthy.
Correct.
McCarthy has to win or anybody wanting to be Speaker has to win a majority of the votes that are cast for a person.
Correct.
Okay? So you got 435 members in the House, or 434 right now. One died recently. So you got to get 218. But if 5 people vote present, you have to get a smaller number because you have to get a majority of 429.
I know I don't want anyone to die, but if someone, are they still doing voting remotely so that you can phone it in from your hospital ward?
I would think not, but I don't know. Can you vote remotely for Speaker on January 3rd? I don't know.
I don't think you're present. Well, I don't know. But
can I say one thing,
please,
in defense of the Knucklehead Caucus?
Good luck.
These people are not the best messenger, but we're seeing what's happening in the Senate right now, which is there's all of this talk about this enormous spending bill. And the days toward Christmas tick away, December 20, 21st, 22nd. The pressure to leave grows, and the leadership comes out and throws a 3,000-page bill on the table and says, vote for it. And then we start hearing some top-line stuff. Well, it's got a lot of money for defense. That's great. It's got money for Ukraine. Yay, that's good. And Democrats say it's got more money for health care. Oh, that's good, too. And they vote for it. And then a few weeks later, we start getting stories about all the crazy stuff that's in the bill. Now, wanting to end that process is not a bad thing. And if that's part of the demands of the Knucklehead Caucus, then that's not a bad thing, which leads me to say, I don't know Kevin McCarthy's plan, but I know he's a planner. He's not a visionary, but he's very organized. He's a good organizer. He has a plan. My feeling is he's probably planning some concessions to make to the Knucklehead Caucus, some common sense things like allowing a certain period between the time a bill is introduced and the time the vote occurs. And he will offer those to them at the appropriate time. He won't do it right now, because if he did it right now, they'd just come up with new demands. But all of this, I think, is going to happen in the January 1 and 2 and 3 time period before the vote on January 3.
I'm very sympathetic to Rand Paul. What's in this 3,000-page bill? I'm very sympathetic to that. But I also understand that McConnell and the responsible Republicans do not want to come back to a House that can't gather, because that means a government shutdown. And Republicans lose in government shutdowns. And there's an argument that they don't always lose. Ted Cruz set up one that worked and that people forget. There's a whole big argument, but let's just generally assume it's bad for everyone. And they don't have a chance. They don't have a choice because of Gates. If everyone knew that McCarthy was going to be Speaker, and here's the Appropriations Chair, and here's the Budget Chair, and here's the Defense Chair, and we'll be able to negotiate better in January. We'll pass a CR and we'll see in January. But we can't come back on January 3rd and not have a majority working for weeks and weeks and weeks as the Knucklehead Caucus actually decides they are monetizing their eccentricity.
Well, let me ask you this. What is the lesson that Republicans should take from Nancy Pelosi, who had a similarly narrow majority in the House, and they were occasionally fractious, and they were occasionally dissenters? We've heard a lot about the squad and that kind of stuff. What was the secret that Nancy Pelosi could do to keep enough of her people in line, even with a tiny majority? She had 222 votes also.
Because over her time when she had a big majority,
do.
She crushed people who opposed her over her time in the majority. That's the lesson you can only prove afterwards. They didn't get their committees. They didn't get their offices. Tim Ryan, who challenged her, barely got support from his colleagues when he ran for Senate. He didn't get the money he wanted. People don't forget, which brings me to Matt Rosendale. He wants to be the nominee. I never get involved in primaries unless someone like Greitens is running in Missouri, who will cost us the seat. I'm getting to the point Rosendale cost us the seat because of this antic. What is in this for Matt Rosendale, who otherwise would have a fair shot at being the nominee to take on John Tester or the Democrat? He is burning up his bridge.
I don't know. I actually do not know. As I was saying before, I'm not sure all of these demands that they have are irrational. I do think the so-called motion to vacate, the one that seems to be kind of at the center of this, which basically allows any member to try to take down the Speaker of the House at any given time, is crazy, and is something that McCarthy could never agree to.
I have one theory. Yeah. If you have extra time, do you have time to stay an extra segment?
Here I am. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start it now. My theory: when I say monetizing eccentricity, it means that you make money by being known for being an idiot. And Matt Gaetz you can get an NFT going on Matt Gaetz for being an idiot. And if you go during the break, Byron, and look at the entrance video of Matt Gaetz, just type in Matt Gaetz on Twitter and see him walk into an arena that Charlie Kirk puts together. They're not there to see Matt Gaetz. They're going to applaud.
I was watching videos from that conference just yesterday.
Okay.
Yes.
When we come back from break, we're going to talk about that because only one of the five is making any money off of that because Charlie pays people to go. And I don't know what he paid Matt Gaetz, but it'll show up on his honorarium. So Matt Gaetz makes money from the far fringe by monetizing his being, I have lots of words I can only say, a knucklehead. I'm going to test that with Byron York because monetizing this stuff is bad for the country. It's good for Matt Gaetz. He can't get a job otherwise. He's going to get primaried, but we'll talk about that with Byron after we come back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. Go to myphdweightloss.com to learn more.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Byron York knows the conservative ecosystem about as well as anybody. I've been at it a little bit longer, and I've been on the West Coast a little bit longer, so maybe I know the Western roots of it a little bit better than Byron, but not D.C. Byron, the conservative ecosystem is a profitable place to play if you have a personality. Is that what's driving Matt Gaetz, in your view?
I think it's got to be a large part of it. If people haven't been watching the America Fest events, which is the Turning Point USA conference that was held out in Phoenix, each guest comes out to this kind of science fiction opening. There's strobe and laser lights going everywhere. There are these sparks machines shooting up all sorts of light. There's smoke. It's just, and when the speaker comes out, it's just Matt Gaetz in a suit, but it's kind of engaged in the aggrandizement and lionization of some of these folks. And as you say, Matt Gaetz got paid to go there. I don't know how much he got. I don't think you know how much he got.
I don't know.
But clearly, there is money to be made, and there's notoriety to be had, especially in holding up a Speaker of the House, because Kevin McCarthy is big and Matt Gaetz is small, and Matt Gaetz might be able to stop the bigger guy.
And Matt has no alternative. Now, I like Charlie a lot. Charlie's my colleague on Salem. Turning Point's doing great things on college campuses. He's engaging volunteers, and he throws Freedom Fest, and God bless everyone who goes. Matt Gaetz is a marginal figure, and had Charlie asked me, I would have said, Charlie, you don't want him. Not only is he marginal, it's weird what he's been around, and it's just not befitting someone who intends to have a serious role in politics for a long time to hook your wagon to that guy. And Ed, do you think that's spilled over? Do people realize in the conservative ecosystem that some folks become radioactive? And it's great to have Don Jr., but you really don't want Matt Gaetz.
Well, it was interesting actually, because at this event, it was remarked that Donald Trump is supporting Kevin McCarthy for Speaker. And I'm just going to read you from a news account of the event. Somebody asked Gaetz, Trump said Kevin McCarthy should be Speaker of the House. And Gaetz responded, HR was not always his best thing. It was sort of a parade of horribles with some of the people this is Trump, chose inside of Washington, D.C., so maybe we ought to have a choice. So Matt Gaetz is actually broken with Donald Trump.
He's attacking Donald Trump. And now let me also take people deep inside this. You have to book Freedom Fest months in advance. You have to send at least half the fee before anyone leaves and the airline ticket, and they don't refund it. So before this all became the Knucklehead Caucus and Matt Gaetz, Charlie invited Matt months ago. You have to plan these things a year in advance, like the Western Conservative Summit and CPAC. They don't just show up, right?
Well,
people have to plan.
Look, events just fell into place for Gaetz here because, listen, the Republicans thought they were going to win the House by a bigger margin. You talk to some of them now, they said, well, we thought we were going to get 228. Well, a lot of them actually thought they were going to get 235.
Yeah, I was among them.
And if they did, they wouldn't have had this problem. I don't think there would have been a big enough knucklehead caucus to deny Kevin McCarthy the speakership. So, events just fell into place for them that, for a variety of reasons, it had nothing to do with Matt Gaetz. The Republican Party underperformed in their House races. They performed well enough to win by the same margin that Democrats controlled the House.
One last question, Byron.
They thought.
Leader McConnell's out saying, and others, we got 10% for defense and only 6% for non-defense discretionary domestic spending. We finally broke the link. Do you think that's a significant win? I do.
Yeah, because for years and years, Democrats had insisted, and they'd won doing this, that whenever Republicans wanted to increase defense spending, that non-discretionary spending, let's say social spending, had to increase by the same amount.
Yep.
So that if you had a much more dangerous world, then you would have to, by rote, you would have to spend more on social programs just to defend yourself in a more dangerous world.
It was crazy, but that link has been broken. and may it never be reforged. Byron York, thank you for your extra time. Merry Christmas to you. Follow him on Twitter at Byron York, not a knucklehead, because he's on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Stay tuned, America.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Speaking of little tiny producers, Generalissimo snuck in. I was talking about the Hugh Cruise last hour, and the banner for that is over at HughHewitt.com. You can go to Hugh Cruise. And little tiny Dwayne, that's two-thirds of Dwayne, because he's now lost 50 pounds on myPhDweightloss.com, chimed in that he's going to get below the number that he needs to be before he goes on the Hugh Cruise to allow himself some expandability. Bring the elastic band pants. Now, I follow that rule. I'm at underneath my target weight of 185 because the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt made Christmas cookies and Genghis Kate made Christmas cookies. Now, the problem is the Genghis Kate Christmas cookies probably won't last until I get there. But the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt's Christmas cookies are probably not going to get there because she made them too early. Like, I'm not leaving until Saturday. So, Generalissimo, if you intend to get under for the cruise in September, when exactly on the myPhDweightloss.com maintenance program, which can be reached at 864-644-1900, when do you exactly plan to get under?
Oh,
little tiny Dwayne.
If I start in August, I can get there pretty comfortably, probably. I can lose... if I really go back on weight loss mode, I can lose 3-4 pounds a week for 2-3 weeks and be just fine.
Where are you right now at 48 pounds under your beginning weight?
191 and change, 191.6.
That would be 48.4 pounds.
So
it's not 50. So you're
where
adding...
is it written, by the way, that every piece of food that is created in December has to be sweets?
I don't know, but it's true. That's why those cookies are not going to last by Genghis Kate, and they're not going to make it to Genghis Kate from her grandma, because it's just the rule that cookies don't leave the house in which they are produced. Is that not also a rule of Christmas?
Yes, I am banking my carbs all day long, but boy, am I spending them on desserts at night.
By the way, when you're the Grinch and you go into your Grinch house and you scare the locals, do you get fed?
Oh, no.
Do they treat you like a kind of benign Moloch and they bring you cookies and stuff like that?
I actually had a mom of 2 daughters who, the older one I've been doing this to for 10 years at least, and they did bring me cookies.
You see? You are a benign Moloch. They're not going to sacrifice their children, but they'll give you their cookies. Nobody ever thinks of me, by the way. Nobody ever brings me cookies.
And why would they?
Because I'm on the other coast, that's why.
Exactly.
All right, so myPhDweightloss.com for the holiday. It might be your New Year's resolution. If you're binging right now, you can begin to take the step now, right? You call
864-644.
1900.
864.
Now you got to syncopate or you screw it up.
I was right on the beat with you.
No, you weren't on the beat. 864. No, on the beat. 8, 6, 4, 6, 4, 1900. Thank you. But by the way, you're going to need more than 5 pounds of buffer for the Hugh Cruise.
Oh, I'm thinking it's got to be closer to 10 for
for 12 days at sea.
For a 2-week cruise, you're going to be eating like a king for.
So maybe you want to shoot for 15 pounds. That gives you a pound a day of excess?
No. I figure if I can get down about 8, 9, I will probably net gain about 2 or 3.
Look, I saw you on that last cruise. You sat in the deck chair. When you were not, quote, working on the board, you were in a deck chair with a beret and a baguette.
You never saw me in a deck chair. When did
I saw the guy with the... I've got a picture right here. His name is Paul Revere. There's the man over here. Take a look at this. Oh, gosh, there goes a couple of things. Is the show still working? Is the show still up?
How would you know? You wouldn't even know if it was working or not.
If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, I have here a picture from the Washington, D.C. studio of the only time that Dwayne is actually standing up. In the whole Hugh Cruise.
Not a deck chair in...
Man, that was a lot. That was a lot of stuff that came down. Oh, wow.
The picture's in 4 parts too. Oh, you've got to be better at this. You've got to
Me?
get
What did
better
I
at this.
do?
You didn't,
I didn't-
have the picture ready to put up, so I had to get it from the shelf. Can I go play?
You need
Here's
to put
Kevin
your-
McCarthy with Maria Bartiromo yesterday
You
explaining
need to
why
put your
there's
tchotchkes up with a staple gun.
cut number 4. Please, while I repair the damage.
Well, it's very damaging. 5 people can stop something. And when you think about this, I've been leader for 4 years. We are the only Republican group to win both cycles. Why everybody else lost, from the Senate to the governors to the presidency, we won both cycles. We won the majority. Then we had a primary to select who would be the nominee for the floor. I won 85% of that vote. But now 5 members want to hold up our ability to move forward, to have the subpoenas to go out to the FBI and to Garland, to have the ability to stop what's happening along the border, to make us energy independent, to pass a Parents' Bill of Rights. This is what the real challenge is all about. And what's happening by them doing this, it is weakening our hand right now. Once I became leader, we won the majority. We were able to lift the mandate for the vaccine for our military. Just a sign of what we can achieve. But now we've got, over in the Senate, you've got 2 senators who will no longer be in office in 15 days that are now writing trillions of dollars in an omnibus bill. We would be stronger if we waited 15 days from now, where the Republicans were in the majority in the House, to actually do something, to curb our spending that brought us the inflation, to force the border to get secure, to have victories, we have energy independence. That's how we would be stronger. But unfortunately, they're moving forward with this. And having these 5 do this actually weakens our hand over on the House side to stop it.
So you heard it from the horse's mouth there. And by the way, we have repaired the damage here at Hewitt Central, inside the beltway that Dwayne inflicted on us. We have repaired the damage, and so we're back up and running. Don't do that again, Dwayne. Let me bring you the market report brought to you by Birch Gold. Yesterday was another horrible day on the market. 182 lost on 162 lost on the Dow, 159 lost on the Nasdaq, 34 lost on the S&P. And overseas this morning, it's red in Germany and France. It's on the line in England. But gold is at $18.16 an ounce. Because if you bought gold 6 weeks ago, you're actually the only person in America who's made money on an investment over the last few days. Gold is at $18.16. If you want to buy gold, go to hughgold.com. That will connect you with Birch Gold. Thousands and thousands of 5-star reviews. They are an independent third-party administrator of 401s, SEP IRAs, 401ks, IRAs that are based on physical gold in a vault, in a depository that they maintain. You pay for that. You buy the gold. They put it there, and it's there forever. And you know what? NASDAQ lost 35% of its value. Amazon is down 50% of its value. Gold has gone up. That's why you buy gold, because when the market gets crazy, gold doesn't. And that's why you put it in a third-party administrated depository like Birch Gold at hughgold.com, not from Barney down the street. That doesn't count. A shoebox under the bed doesn't count. You need a legitimate third-party administrator to run a physical precious metals IRA. That's Birch Gold. Go there, get that. Let me go back to my cut sheet, because I found Ben Collins of MSNBC rapidly becoming the least credible reporter in the world. Now, I've invited him many times. He doesn't respond. And he's not very credible. On with Katie Tour, cut number 9.
So I want to know what's appealing about Ron DeSantis, because there is a lot of ink spilled on whether or not he's a viable long-term presidential candidate. He's so hot right now, but we've often seen people be hot in the early stages, Scott Walker being one of them, Jeb Bush, and then only to peter out. And there's talk about Ron DeSantis' personality.
I actually don't want to waste time on Ben Collins. Nobody cares what Ben Collins thinks. I don't know why MSNBC has him on, except he says really fringy things, and they're continuing to shrink their audience. Same thing has happened to NBC generally as they go left, left, left. And what a surprise, they find out that the people on the center are leaving them. And not just the center right, but the center and even the center left do not need Katie Tur talking to this guy, Ben Collins, who's just out there. I mean, just not a reporter. Got no chops. They invented him. He invented himself. And he just says crazy stuff. I'll play it on the grand old pod later. I'm not going to waste my time with it right now. because I can ask you to donate to Angel Tree right now, and I'm going to do that. We are closing in on 4,000 children served here on the Hugh Hewitt Show, and I greatly appreciate that. I'd love to get 40,000 kids served, but I need some big donors, and I need a lot more $25 donors. The banner is over at hughhewitt.com. Listen to Stephanie about what happens when she drops off a prison fellowship Angel Tree present to the child who has a mom or a dad in jail.
The little boy answered the door and I said, "Oh, here's a gift from your dad." And it was just this, "Oh, he remembered me." And I think the whole gift kind of fades into the background. It's that connection and that realization that I belong and my friends are having Christmas, but I'm having Christmas too. I'm worthy as a little kid. And that's the part that doesn't leave you.
It doesn't leave you. It also doesn't leave the child. By the way, the present does matter. That's a nice Christian church lady right there. And God bless them. I'm a nice Christian church man, and the nice Christian church ladies power the world. And so she delivered the present, and she got but believe me, the kid wants the present too. Because everybody's going to talk about what they got for Christmas at school on January the 3rd or January the 2nd, whenever they go back. And if you didn't get nothing, you got nothing to talk about. That's why Angel Tree steps into the breach with a present, with a Bible, and with the all-important note from mom or dad. Call 888-206-2764 to be a giver. 888-206-2764. Or, and I prefer this because it's instantaneous and it shows up and we know where it came from, the Prison Fellowship banner at the top of hughhewitt.com. They will send you a receipt immediately. You'll get that for your tax files. It's fully deductible, by the way, 100% deductible. A lot of you are making your year-end tax donations at what Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I do is we write our checks to our churches on both coasts at the end of the year because then it counts in the 2022 tax return as opposed to the 2023 tax return. You give because you should, but don't ignore the fact that a fully tax-deductible gift made before December 31st at midnight matters to this year's taxes rather than next year's. Now, there won't be any tax hikes next year. All right, they got some in this year. There aren't going to be any. Now the Republicans have the House, so we ended that nonsense. No more expansion of the Supreme Court. And so lots of good is coming on, but so much more good would have happened if we'd had the House under the control of Kevin McCarthy for the last 2 years. And a lot of good will start the moment we give gavels to the 14 standing committees and the one select committee chairman. But we can't do that because of Matt Gaetz. I don't want anything bad to happen to Matt Gaetz. I want you to call Matt Gaetz and Matt Rosendale and the other members of the Knucklehead Caucus. There are 5 of them standing in the way of a orderly transition in the House. Call them up. Tell them to stop it. And don't forget your relieffactor.com. All right, I took it in the first hour. I remind you about hours 2 and 3. The bug is down there at the bottom if you're watching on the Salem News Channel. I just got the numbers on the Salem News Channel. More and more people are choosing to watch me, which is why I got a haircut. If you notice that, and I used to say it to Dwayne about haircuts like this, were you riding in the back of a truck? Because it's pretty short. And I asked it for that way because December and January, I'm on the road a lot. I got to get back into teaching. It's just hard to schedule time. So I just said chop it off. But I got it done, and I walked there, and I can't walk there in California. I walked there, and relieffactor.com makes it possible to motor around everywhere inside the Beltway when it's not frigid. So by midday, I'll be out rambling around in the Beltway on the highways and byways of the Beltway, thanks to relieffactor.com. Trundling, as I like to do, never going to be mistaken for the speedster that I once was, but relieffactor.com makes it possible. Give it to yourself for Christmas, 1995 3-week starter pack. Come right back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Our phone number is 1-800-520-1234. If you want to defend Matt Gaetz and the Knucklehead Caucus, by all means, call me. 1-800-520-1234. The number of things they are screwing up is so vast. Let me just start with candidate recruitment. All right? You want to add. Now, we have a map. We have the numbers after redistricting. Now, the districts will change in North Carolina and Ohio because the Supreme Courts there changed, and the new Supreme Courts will uphold the maps that the legislature and the independent commission come up with. All right, so that's going to happen. And the Republicans are going to pick up seats in Ohio and North Carolina, and they know where they have to defend, right? It's going to be very close in some places like Juan Ciscomani in Arizona, but they'll pour resources into that, and they'll also target where Democrats barely won. All right, so we'll begin to recruit candidates for those districts. And we can't get started, and Kevin McCarthy can't work his magic. I'm going to talk with Derrick Van Orden, our new Navy SEAL turned congressman from Wisconsin, at the top of the next hour. We're going to talk about candidate recruitment in a moment, about how Kevin does that. And I say Kevin because he's been my friend forever. And if I were in the House, I'd say, what are you, people nuts? Don't you want a caucus that works? Have you ever seen what Kevin did in California and has done for the last 4 years? Are you out of your mind? And you won't make a dent on Matt Gaetz, but you might get Matt Rosendale. I mean, I really don't understand Matt Rosendale. Keeping this up destroys his chances for the Senate. Out of the box. It destroys the chances of anyone else in the Knucklehead Caucus to move up or go statewide. I can see that Jacob's running through a bunch of callers and none of them are making it through, so I assume they're drunk or they're snarling or they're incoherent. Jacob, do you want to tell me what that was like, the Matt Gaetz people? Were they drunk, incoherent, or stupid, or off topic? What was that? You ran through like 5 calls. I'm just curious as to what it was. Most
of them were saying you were hypocritical.
And why?
I don't know. I kind of hung up after that.
Okay. Well, don't hang up. We'll take people who want to throw them at me. I don't mind that, but I've been dealing with that for 23 years. I really don't think there's a case to be made for Matt Gaetz. I don't. Matt Gaetz can call up if he wants. People inside his delegation, his state delegation, tell me he's a nice guy in a room. He gets along well with the Florida delegation. So there's that. People like him in the Florida delegation. I've never met him. I've never had him on the show. I don't put marginal figures on the show, and he's a marginal figure. And now, though, there are real costs there. Wesley in Georgia. I'll put you on, Wesley. How goes it? What's up?
Everything's good. It's raining here. Hugh, it's going to be 24 degrees Friday night. It's going to be cold. We really like Matt Gaetz, and we wish that you would devote your time to someone else.
Why do you like Matt Gaetz?
Because he's doing what his constituents sent him to Washington to do, which is to oppose the things that he's opposing and advocate the things that he's advocating, and he's responsible to them and not you. You're
right about that.
Gaetz.
You're absolutely right about that, but I want his constituents, and I'm on his district. I want them to know that he has enabled a $1.7 trillion spending bill that would have been much smaller had Kevin organized the House and had the gavel.
I don't think that you really know that, Hugh. That is your guess, and that's the thing it is.
No, it's a
guess. It's a guess.
I talked to Republican senators.
It is your guess.
No, again, Wesley, it's not. I talked to Republican senators who tell me they cannot come back to a non-organized House. It means a government shutdown.
Matt's responsible to his constituents, not to you. You leave him alone.
No, I'm not going to leave him alone. He's screwing up the country. If he was just screwing up his district.
Your stinking show by talking about him every day.
Well, no, I'm not. You just called.
Yes, you are, because it's pissing people off like me, mister.
No, well, I mean, I'm sorry you're angry, but you called.
I did call because you need to change your course, adjust your jib, get positive. We don't want to hear this vitriol about Matt Gaetz in the morning.
Well, I'm going to keep it up as long as he keeps it up, because he's keeping it up and he's stopping it.
You're going to lose affiliates, bro. I'll tell you that right now.
I don't think so. I think that of the 200...
I'll bet you, if you'll keep score on the air, I guarantee you'll start losing affiliates.
222 members, 5 of them don't want Kevin McCarthy. So I got affiliates in all 222 of those districts.
They're not knuckleheads. They're doing their job.
They are knuckleheads. They are. I like Andy Biggs.
Hugh. Let me tell you something. It's a non-starter for you to be doing this, okay? It's not good radio.
Thank you, Wesley. Duly noted. You are wrong. The Grinch in Pennsylvania. Hello, Grinch. Oh, you got 10 seconds. I'll hold him over. Hold him over. Derrick Van Orden is coming up, America. I don't think I'm losing any affiliates. I don't. There are 470 of them. We do keep track on a monthly basis. And I will tell you. I lost an affiliate about a month and a half ago for exactly the opposite reason that the caller Wesley just suggested. But I take all calls. That's what I am. I am an open book. Stay tuned, America. Hour number 3, Tom Cotton, Derrick Van Orden, Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland, all coming up on the next hour of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This hour of Hugh Hewitt starts right now on Salem News Channel.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt in Hour 3 of the show today. Senator Tom Cotton tells us what's actually in the omnibus. I'll also talk with Derrick Van Orden, a new congressman from Wisconsin, the former SEAL. He's always fun. And Maryland Governor Larry Hogan looks back and he looks forward to 2024. Stay tuned.
You won't want to miss a minute. This hour of Hugh Hewitt is on Salem News Channel.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I've got a son and a son-in-law who have been through Sears training. And I've got a nephew who's been through Hell Week, and my buddies Lou Bremer and Rourke Denver have told me about Hell Week. Our next guest, Derrick Van Orden, a seal of long-standing, now a newly elected member of Congress. I want him to compare freshman orientation for the House with Hell Week. How did it go, Derrick?
Well, I never thought of it that way, but it was actually 2 weeks. Hell Week was only 5 days. There you go. The freshman orientation was a little bit longer, and I started calling it Congress Camp, and it's pretty interesting. I got on my social media. When people go to the federal government in Washington, D.C., they seem to oftentimes forget about their district, and the people in the district don't know what they're doing. And so I'm trying to demystify this entire process and really open up the doors of the House of Representatives so that the average American can see what takes place every day. And I think a little more transparency in government would be great for everybody.
I think this is fabulous, and I've been following your feed. Tell people what it's like to be a freshman arriving. I did this with Juan. He has the perspective from the South, from Tucson, right? You've got the far north. You're like up there on the tundra, and D.C. feels warm to you. What's it like for you?
Well, you nail it there. And Juan Ciscomani, by the way, is one of the finest guys you're going to meet. We've become fast friends, and I'm really proud to be his colleague. You're right. There's a lot of people from Florida are walking around shivering, wearing bearskin hats, and we're in T-shirts and wanted to barbecue on top of the Cannon office building in DC. But it's really nice. It does remind me in a way of boot camp, honestly, because you have people coming from disparate backgrounds all together with a common purpose, and that really is to serve America. And I'll be frank, the Democrat side, a lot of this stuff was done in a bipartisan manner, and I was really pleasantly surprised by the fact that a lot of these Democrats that get demonized by us, and we get demonized by Democrats, are really able to sit across the table from each other and talk to each other. So I have confidence in this 118th Congress coming up, the freshmen, that we're going to be able to do great things for America, because we're looking at the mission, and the mission is America. It's not our own personal political wants and needs.
Now, Representative-elect Van Orden, I don't want you to pick fights with what I call the knucklehead caucus, the 5 guys who are holding up the transition. I don't want you to do that. You don't need that. But I am curious about when you got recruited, if Kevin McCarthy played a role in wooing you into the race, or who got you, Derrick Orden, to say, yes, finally, go for it?
Me and my wife. Kevin McCarthy didn't recruit me. Kevin McCarthy helped me immensely to get elected, as he did with the vast majority of the folks that are coming in. I want to be really clear. I'm not using the term knucklehead, and I don't think you should either, Hugh. These are people that have a divergent political view than we do, and they have a different way that they're trying to get their point across. Would I do that? Absolutely not. No. The reason we have the majority in the House is because of the team that Kevin McCarthy assembled and led. Cut to the end, period. That's it. And that deserves the ability for him to continue to lead this team for the next couple of years. So I'm looking forward to working with these guys. I'm confident that they're going to come around. They need to understand that the reason, I'm going to say it again out loud, the reason that we took the House is because of Kevin McCarthy's efforts, the team that he assembled and led. And here's another thing here. People forget that in 2020, Nancy Pelosi had 222 seats. How many seats do we have now? 222. It's exactly the same margin. But the Democrat Party, and unfortunately a lot of the Republicans, built this up where they thought Ronald Reagan's going to come sliding down a unicorn, or on a rainbow on a unicorn, and that we're going to have 435 Republican members of Congress. That's just not true. But we have the exact same majority that Nancy Pelosi had in 2020. So we need to get together as a conference and leverage the ability to affect positive change in the United States of America in the House. And if we do that by being team players.
Now, Derrick, duly noted your objection to knucklehead, but not persuasive. I want to tell you why. 31 years I've been in this chair. 31 years. I have never seen a dumber move, because we have a select committee on China to stand up that is urgently necessary. We have a judiciary committee that's got to look at the FBI and what they were doing with Twitter. We have an appropriations committee that, were we in place, would be able to negotiate right now with the Senate on this $1.7 trillion. Now, I don't expect you to throw in on that. That's just Hugh Hewitt after 31 years. I've never seen anything this dumb. What would you do with a teammate? And these are Republican teammates, right? I'm a Republican. Everyone knows that.
Yes,
what would you do with a teammate that you served with for a long time who just did a bonehead move?
Well, Hugh, I got to tell you, you just reordered my priorities for Congress. At one time, I want to have a convincing argument that changes your mind. I don't care what it's about. It could be about lunch. But if I can pull that off, I've been a successful legislator. Hey, so this is how I approach this problem. If Admiral Nimitz had to look in front and behind him all the time, we never would have conquered Japan in World War II. If General Patton had to look forward and back at the same time, we never would have gotten through Tunisia, through Northern Africa, and then finally into Southern Europe. If Eisenhower had to look in front and behind him, we never would have conquered France and gotten into Germany and ended World War II. So a leader has to be able to look in a single direction and understand that he is leading a unified front. So coming from a military background, that's how I view these things. We have a mission to accomplish, and the mission is America. And the person that's leading the party has to understand that the folks behind him are not trying to kick him or her out of office constantly, or have the ability to do so, because that degrades the ability for us to work as a unit.
Gosh, that's brilliantly put. Leave it there, because I got a substantive question, not political. You, okay. I assume, during your deployments went to Djibouti, right? At some point, you must have been in Djibouti. The Chinese are building, they're trying to basically buy Djibouti. Does that concern Derrick Van Orden, having been a veteran of our facilities and operations there?
100%. I lived in Djibouti, and it's a unique place. People don't understand there's a single railhead that goes from the Red Sea that supplies all of the goods, or the vast majority of goods, for Ethiopia. That goes right through the port of Djibouti. It shares a border with Somalia, which is a war-torn country, we understand that, and it shares a border with Ethiopia, with Eritrea. That is a critical point. It's right across the way from Yemen, and it goes up and it leads to the Suez Canal to the north. So if the Chinese are capable of taking control of Djibouti, we have a real problem, because they already own the railroad that goes across the Panamanian Isthmus to control the Panama Canal. That means that the Chinese would, in effect, have control over the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. Those are really bad things for really big picture stuff that I believe that President Xi is working on. I mean, this guy thinks in strategic 20-year terms, and unfortunately, we have people throwing rotten fruit at each other, and they can't even figure out that where the Wuhan virus came from.
This is, to me, everything depends on Xi. And did you get armed services, Derrick Van Orden? Have you gotten a committee assignment yet?
Committee assignments will come out in mid-January, and the committee that I'm advocating to get on hard is the Agriculture Committee, because I represent an agricultural district. If I could be on the House Armed Services Committee also, that would be fantastic. But I view my primary purpose in Congress is to represent my state, which is Wisconsin, and we are the dairy state, for Pete's sake. We produce 1 billion more pounds of cheese than the next state, and that's California. So
that's pretty impressive, actually.
It's totally impressive. It's awesome. I love cheese. I'll bring you some.
Talk to me about Luke Fickell, though, because you went and got an Ohio State guy to coach the Badgers. Now they might actually be fairly potent.
You know what, man? I leave that up to those football players. I got a country to run. Football's great. It's fun to watch. But it should be a pastime, and my pastime is making sure that I'm fully prepared to represent the people of the state of Wisconsin to the best.
Are you gonna live here? Are you gonna go back and forth every weekend, Derrick Van Orden?
I'm going back and forth. You know what? To me, it's great to be in Washington, D.C. I think you need to be there for a certain period of time. You get to know your colleagues, and I think that's helpful for getting stuff through. But I'm a Wisconsinite, and I'm looking out at snow right now. It's 10 degrees. It's absolutely beautiful. And so I'm going to spend as much time in district as possible.
Okay, quick question. Do you have to fly into Milwaukee and drive? And if so, I want people to understand what representatives who have, Juan's got to go to Dallas to get to Tucson. It's forever, but he's got to go back every week. He's got 6 hits. How long does the commute take Derrick Van Orden?
For me to fly, if I do a regional airport, it's about 1 hour and 15 minutes to La Crosse, or 2 hours to Madison. It's a direct flight from Madison to DCA. If I fly through La Crosse, that's a hopper up to Minneapolis, and then to DCA, which is downtown. So you're looking at a full day of travel, and we'll be doing that probably twice a week.
Rack up those miles.
Well, it's the nature of the game, man. It's funny, when the system was developed, you could ride a horse around your district in a day. And here, I've got 13,000 square miles, 19 whole and partial.
Good counties. Lord!
Yep, and during the campaign, man, me and my staff, we put over 180,000 miles on our vehicles.
Well, you earned it the old-fashioned way. You asked for people's votes. Derrick Van Orden, keep coming back. Congratulations. Thanks for a little look into the world of a newly elected freshman from Wisconsin. Did you say 1 million pounds more cheese than California?
That's right. Take that, California.
Well, I'm kind of stunned. I'm really, actually, that's my new fun fact to know and tell. Derrick Van Orden, thank you. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. 35 years ago, this album, A Very Special Christmas, was released. And is this Stevie Nicks? I think this is Stevie Nicks. Because the producer's father died, and he just put it together, and they all loved him so much that they came together. So we're using that for bump music today. I want to go back to a story in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. Mortgage buy-downs are making a comeback. I confirmed this with Andrew Del Rey at andrewandtodd.com. They are offering a 1-1, a 2-1, and a 3-1 mortgage offer where they buy down your interest rate for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, depending on how long you think it's going to take for interest rates to come down. Now, some of you won't want that at all. You're going to take a look at the fact that some 30-year fixes in some places, this is not applicable to everyone, are back below 6%. Some 15 years are at 5.5, depends, or 5.7. Depends on where you are, what your credit is, how much you're putting down. I can't give you rates. AndrewandTodd.com, there with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They never lead people on. They tell you the truth. They absolutely look you in the eye and say, here's what your credit rating is. Here's how much you can borrow. Here's the rate we can do it. Here's some options if it's too high. And you expect interest rates to come down in 2 years, which I don't think they're going to come down in the first year. I would get a 2-1 or a 3-1 is really the better play because interest rates will be down, you refinance in 3 years. But mortgage buy-downs are making a comeback, and you can be a part of that if you want to. Well, you know what's not coming down? Housing prices. Housing prices are not coming down because there aren't enough houses. So it doesn't matter how much money you pump into the economy. You can't buy a house when there aren't enough houses. The houses stay high, the buyers disappear because they can't afford it. That's why the mortgage buy-down makes sense. Go to andrewandtodd.com or call 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. About to give you a different 888 number. Andrew and Todd are at 888-888-1172. That's the easiest number ever. 3838-1172. The Angel Tree number is a little bit more difficult, but I want you to hear from Stacy first, who delivered an Angel Tree present to the child of an incarcerated prisoner.
The little boy answered the door and I said, oh, here's a gift from your dad. And it was just this, oh, he remembered me. And I think the whole gift kind of fades into the background. It's that connection and that realization that I belong and my friends are having Christmas, but I'm having Christmas too. I'm worthy as a little kid. And that's the part that doesn't leave you.
Thank you, Stacy Campbell. Thank you. I'm about $8,800 short of where I wanted to be at the beginning of this, but I'd love to go blow past that. And so, I need a few hundred people at $25 or one person at $10,000, but it really doesn't matter where we end up. What matters is how many kids get a gift. $25 takes care of a child. The number for, if you prefer phones, to the banner over at HughHewitt.com, 888-206-2764. 888-206-2764. That's what you should do. But I like the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. One final Christmas present suggestion, and it's a wonderful one. That is the universe. And the universe matters because not only do you get every minute of the show commercial free, but you also get the grand old pod. That's my new pod. I began it 3 weeks ago. We're getting better at it every day. And today it will have Larry Hogan's exit interview on it. I'll talk to him a little bit on air and then take him along. It'll have all the stories that I don't have time to do. I do want to play the Ron DeSantis bit because Ron DeSantis took aim yesterday at the teachers' unions and how they extort money from teachers. Cut number 1.
So what we want to do in terms of that is do a paycheck protection legislation, which basically just says, okay, first of all, you do not have to join teachers union, but if you do, the government, we don't want to play a role in deducting anybody's money, so you write a check, every month for the dues, and you do it that way.
And you know what? Every teacher I know, every real teacher I know would prefer that option be given to them because they catch flack from the union in ways large and small if they don't sign up for the automatic withdrawal. If you outlaw the automatic withdrawal, and then the union rep has to run around and try and collect a check, you say, sorry, I'm a little short this month. It's not the same thing. Bravo, Ron DeSantis. Every Republican governor should look for the same thing. Coming up, Senator Tom Cotton. The omnibus was unveiled last night, $1.7 trillion. Defense spending up 10%. That's the good news. The bad news, discretionary domestic spending up 6%. We'll talk with Senator Cotton about it after the break. Breaking news always right here on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to salemnewschannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.
Welcome back, America. If you're still Christmas shopping, I have in my hand Only the Strong, Reversing the Left's Plot to Sabotage American Power. It's the brand new book by Senator Tom Cotton, who joins me now. Good morning, Senator Cotton.
Good morning, Hugh. It's good to be on with you. Yep, and last-minute Christmas plug for Only the Strong. You might be able to get it delivered. If not, you can probably pick it up at bookstores near you. I can promise you, and I think you'll agree, that it may be a weighty topic, but it's not a weighty read. So it might be a good book to pick up while you're sitting in an airport with your flights delayed or lounging around the house next weekend.
It's a brisk read, and I keep it here because on occasions like this, the day after the omnibus is revealed, I go to page 219 and I read, the defense budget needs to grow to at least 4% of the economy and probably more than that. And on page 223, historian and Korean War veteran T.R. Fehrenbach cautioned that every society ultimately gets the military it wants and deserves. Based on your own metrics, what is the military America wants and deserves after the omnibus unveiled its spending levels last night, Senator?
So Hugh, it's moving in the right directions. The Democrats agreed, somewhat surprisingly, to spend the money that they just voted to authorize last week. Now, we haven't achieved yet what I wrote about in Only the Strong, which is 3 to 5 year real and 35% real annual growth, in part because of high rates of inflation. But it's certainly better than a full year continuing resolution, which would freeze spending at last year's level. And again, it's moving in the right direction, I suspect, and hope that it will continue to do so when we have a new Republican House come January.
Now, Senator, I've explained to people this morning what Leader McCarthy said to Maria Bartiromo. The Senate can't take the risk of the House not being organized and not being able to pass a CR, especially the Pentagon. So I think you've got to pass this, even though if McCarthy had the gavel, things would be different in January. Is that part of the reasoning that you've heard in the caucus why you have to go for the omnibus now rather than wait for the House to get its act together, which could take weeks, months, who knows?
Well, no question, Hugh. There are many Senate Republicans who worry that the new House Republican majority will not be able to pass spending bills with 218 Republican votes come January or February. And the way that dynamic would play out would be that then Speaker McCarthy would have to go to the Democrats and ask for their votes to pass a bill. And if that were to happen, then the Democrats would obviously demand a ransom in the form of tens of billions of dollars of new spending that they didn't get in this bill. So there's no question that many Senate Republicans think that right now the best deal possible, not just in December, but also in the new year, will be a bill that holds the Democrats to the defense budget they just voted for last week, while also preventing the domestic spending budget from going up beyond what Joe Biden requested. I mean, after all, the Democrats have spent hundreds of billions of dollars on their own domestic priorities over the last 2 years in the course of a couple budget bills and an infrastructure bill and a science and technology bill. So there's no reason for them to demand more, and we were able to hold the line on that. Again, this is a big bill that just got released. There's obviously some good things in there. There's always going to be some bad things in there. I think senators and congressmen are going to spend the next few days poring over it. But there's the dynamic you cite certainly is on the mind of some Republican senators.
Let me focus in on one of the things I hope is in there. Mycroft Hewitt, my older brother, who I call Mycroft, is the PhD toxicologist. And I spent an hour with him talking about vaccines on Sunday. He said the one demographic, the one gender that has to worry and maybe step back from this vaccine are men 17 to 30, because while they might get myocarditis from the virus, they may also get it from the vaccine. So the vaccine mandate does not make any sense for young men joining the military. They have to make their own choice. Did you get rid of it in the omnibus?
The vaccine mandate for the military?
Yes.
No, actually, we got rid of that last week in the NDAA.
Oh, very good. Oh, very good.
So there have been no further requirements of coronavirus vaccines for our military. I know that the military leadership didn't like it. In my opinion, they were too stubborn and dug in on that. In part, they want to maintain the traditional principle that the military can require vaccinations or other medical treatments for its troops. And in general, I agree with that principle. You know, I had to take several vaccines when I was in the military, including painful and inconvenient ones like the smallpox vaccines. So there's a few differences here. One is that this vaccine is still under an emergency use authorizations. All those other vaccines have been around for decades, and smallpox for centuries and proven effective. Two, It had proven largely ineffective. I mean, it didn't really stop the transmission of the virus. It does appear to still help people who are elderly or medically frail, but that's the opposite of the military population. It's what you said, mostly 17 to 30-year-old men and some women as well, and there's almost no evidence that it's beneficial for them. And then third, we're in the middle of a recruiting and retention crisis. So I wish the Department of Defense had relented on this and accepted common sense months ago, but since they didn't, we acted in the defense bill last week.
You know, Dr. Mycroft told me exactly that, and it's the science. I'm not preaching ideology here. I'm just telling you the science. It just is a toss-up, a jump ball for 17 to 30-year-olds, and probably not a good jump ball to take. Josh Hawley, your colleague, tweeted out early this morning that TikTok will be banned under the omnibus from all government devices. Please tell me he's right.
Yeah, I believe that did make it into the final bill, and if so, it's a welcome development. I'm a co-sponsor of that legislation, and banning TikTok from all government devices is a good first step towards banning it entirely in our country.
Now, Senator, this is a mix of the NDAA and the omnibus. Some people have argued we have to abandon the demand on the Pentagon to give us ship count goals because we never make them, and that it's a useless exercise. What do you think about that? That's not actually covered in Only the Strong. I went and looked for that, and strategic plans are great, but not if you don't live up to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, in general, that which gets measured gets improved. So I think it's always worthwhile to know what your combat power is, where you're talking about the number of ships, number of aircraft, number of tracked vehicles, number of troops, and whether or not those are combat ready. You know, for many years in the Obama era, we had a number of aircraft that simply weren't able to fly because they were being taxed to the maximum, and there wasn't enough money in the operations and maintenance budget. So I don't think there's any question that we need an understanding of the platforms that we have available. Now, you can always debate about what the mix of those should be, and also whether they should be manned or unmanned going forward. But Congress and our senior military leaders need that information readily available to try to evaluate our ability to meet the threats of the world.
All right, now, Senator, in terms of what you actually agreed to spend last night, the $1.7 trillion, hadn't passed the Senate yet, but I'm assuming you're a yes vote on that. Does that have in there a pay raise for the military? And if so, do you know how much it is?
Yeah, it does, Hugh. And I think the number that we agreed to last week in the NDA was around 4%. I will say, one, shouldn't assume just yet that I'm going to be a vote for that. Obviously, I support the defense spending that meets the defense authorization bill last week. But it's a long bill. We got a couple days to review it. A lot of the legislation is stuff that already had passed the Senate or passed the House, so it's not new material. It's not complicated to review. But always the step I want to take is to carefully review any bill before casting a vote for it, especially one of these big year-end bills. So tell your listeners, one thing I always said in the Senate is that they don't hide the good stuff in 4,000 pages. The good stuff is going to be in the press release that you read this morning. The bad stuff is going to be what you have to read through carefully and maybe do a few Control-F functions on the PDF to discover. But I'll review it carefully, and I'll make the vote based on what I think is best for Arkansas and best for our country.
Now, Senator, I want to drill down to something you may not know anything about. Senator Lee gave a speech about Lieutenant Alconis, a Navy lieutenant who's in prison in Japan on vehicular manslaughter. And it's a questionable case from what I can see. Senator Lee makes an argument that it's really a real questionable case. In either event, they are taking away his benefits at the Pentagon, and the Secretary of Defense has said, yeah, he's losing his benefits, his pay, his medical, his family's left out to dry. What do you make of that case and of the Pentagon's responsiveness to Senator Lee?
No, I know the case very well, Hugh. Lieutenant Alconis's roommate is an Arkansan, so I've been apprised of it, following the case, and been involved personally, as has Mike Lee, from the very beginning. You know, I wish that the Department of Defense would have made this exception to policy. In general, you take away pay and benefits from a soldier who's been lawfully convicted and detained in another country of a crime under the laws of those country and in accordance with our status of forces agreements. I think there's enough doubt about this case that is a prudent one-time decision by Secretary Austin to allow pay and benefits to continue for Lieutenant Alconis's wife and children. I wish he had made that decision last week. I've been working with Senator Lee first on an effort to perhaps put that provision in the spending bill. I don't think that happened, or perhaps to provide what's known as a private bill that would benefit the Alconis family in particular, to see if we can do that by the end of the year, if not early next year. Again, I think that there's enough questions, enough doubts about what happened to Lieutenant Alconis in Japan that we should err on the side of caring for his family as we continue to work with our friends in the Japanese government to try to bring him home.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, especially given the small amount of money going out and our recruitment crisis. You got to have people's backs in tenuous situations. I am curious, though, about the dynamic in the Pentagon. Admiral Stavridis, who was on yesterday, agrees with you and Senator Lee that this is a case that should be reviewed. He suggested, however, the SecDef is unwilling to reach into the Navy and into Secretary Del Toro's writ, who is in turn reluctant to reach into the Navy bureaucracy writ. I mean, if you're going to be SecDef, why not be SecDef for the big things as well as the little things, this being a small case but with a lot of attention?
Yeah, Hugh, I'm not really sure. I'm not privy to what Secretary Austin and Secretary Del Toro are thinking here. I think there's some element of the State Department as well. The idea that taking such an action might cast aspersions on the government of Japan or their justice system. Obviously, I would not do so. Japan is one of our closest treaty allies and a linchpin of our alliance and security system in the Western Pacific. I simply think that there's enough questions and concerns about this case that as we continue to work with the government of Japan over Lieutenant Alconis's status, we should not cut off the pay and benefit that's supporting his wife and his children here in America.
All right, last question, Senator. Did the money for Ukraine get in at the level that you think appropriate?
My understanding is that did happen, Hugh. We're going to review the line items there. I've long said that I think we should back Ukraine to the hilt with military aid. They've had great successes on the battlefield this year, especially over the last 3 months. Now is not the time to start drawing down that military aid. However, we need Europe to provide more financial, economic, and humanitarian aid. In some cases, the United States is the only country that can provide this military aid because of our strong, robust defense industry. But one thing that European nations, especially France and Germany, can provide is financial assistance. And they need to step forward. They're not carrying their own share of the load. They're not even doing what countries like Poland and other Eastern and Southern or Central European countries are doing. So, yes, we need to back Ukraine to the hilt with military aid. We need Europe, especially Germany and France, to step forward with more financial and economic aid.
Yeah, we also need the German tanks to work, which they're not. Senator Cotton, Merry Christmas to you and the entire Cotton clan. Thank you, and I'll talk to you in the new year, if not next week. Thank you for joining me regularly. I much appreciate it.
Thank you, Hugh. Merry Christmas to you and all your listeners.
Merry Christmas to all of you, and remember, only the strong. You can get it from Amazon Prime overnight. Get it for your friends and family. And then, for yourself, relieffactor.com. Great present for yourself. I take it every morning in hour number 1. I remind you in hour 2 and 3, because some of you are not listening to all 3 hours. Shame on you. Some of you are actually commuting to work. Good for you. And you remember, if you put it in your car, to take it along with your thermos of lukewarm coffee, like I've got my lukewarm coffee here. Coming up after the break, Governor Larry Hogan joins me. I don't know if he takes it every day. I don't know if he has to actually drive very far to get to the State House. It's his exit interview. Larry Hogan coming up. But don't forget, during the break, you can go order relieffactor.com. $19.95 is the 3-week starter pack. Don't commit for the long term. Try it, like it, see if it works. It takes 3 weeks to get the levels up in your body that it's necessary to help supplement your not only natural immunity, but also your natural anti-inflammatory system. Because the minor aches and pains, that's just inflammation. Battle it every day with relieffactor.com. Governor Hogan is next from Maryland. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America. Governor Larry Hogan is completing 8 very successful years as governor of Maryland. He joins me now for a sort of exit interview. Governor, welcome. Merry Christmas. Good to have you.
Well, thank you, Hugh. It's really good to be with you. Merry Christmas to you as well.
Now, I've been busy because it is Christmas, so I wasn't able to check up on the score of the Ravens-Browns game from Saturday, Governor. Do you happen to have that handy?
Yeah, no, I don't know what happened there.
Okay. I want to start by asking you a quick question. Ron McDaniel has my endorsement for running for re-election of the chair of the RNC. What do you think?
Well, you know what? I obviously don't have a vote on the RNC and haven't really been following it that closely. But I like Rana. She's, I think, been working hard. But look, we weren't very successful. We lost a whole lot of races that we should have. I'm not sure that was her fault, but I'm sort of staying out of it and not really following what's happening with that race.
One of the things she told me, sort of hinted that the Republican debates in 2023 will begin in Milwaukee, probably in July. I urged her to make it earlier in June or May or even April because it's wasted opportunity to get shelf space in voters' minds. What do you think about that, Governor Hogan, since you're likely to be on that stage?
Well, that's you've taken a step further than I ever have, Hugh, but I don't know if I'll be on that stage or not. But, I think the more opportunities for the voters to see potential candidates, the better, and have the opportunity to discuss and debate the issues. But, I don't know how many, whether it's you get more people tuned in when it's a little closer to later in the year, or whether people are ready to start focusing on 2024 at the beginning of 23.
I think they get millions of people, and we miss small dollar donors. But that's a debate with Ron and others. I want to get to your biggest accomplishments, but before that, let's get the scandal in your past out of the way. You went to Florida State, so you're a Seminole, and
that's probably the shadiest part of my record. But I'm a proud Seminole. I enjoyed my time in Tallahassee, so. The Seminoles are coming back. They're starting to have a little bit more success, and we made it to a bowl game. They had a pretty rough patch of it for a while.
Well, Maryland made the Buckeyes break a sweat this year, and you're a Terps governor. I mean, I'm just kind of shocked at this Seminole thing. I went to read your Wikipedia, and you've successfully covered this up for 8 years. Did it ever come up in your previous successful races?
I think most people found out about it. I wasn't really trying to hide it. I would be walking around sometimes with, Seminoles gear and Florida State hats or jerseys or something. So, I'm proud. I'm a proud Seminole, but I'm obviously a lifelong Terps fan as well.
So, Governor, tell us you've been 8 years. You and Doug Ducey have both got a lot done. I tell people we got Republican governors get stuff done. Mike DeWine's got 4 more years to match you, so does Ron DeSantis. What do you count as your big wins?
Well, the reason I ran for governor in the first place was that Maryland's economy was a mess. They had passed 43 taxes in a row, which crushed our economy. We lost almost 10,000 businesses, more than 100,000 jobs. They were calling us the California of the East. And I decided to run to try to do something about it. So I'm the only Republican governor in America to get a Democratic legislature to cut taxes. I have a 70% progressive Democratic legislature in both houses, and we got them to cut taxes 8 years in a row by $4.7 billion. And we took what was one of the worst economies in the country. I think we were 49th out of 50 states, and we moved it to the top 10. It was the biggest economic turnaround. I inherited a $5.1 billion deficit and turned it into a $5.7 billion surplus. And so I think the biggest accomplishment that I'm the most proud of is we did exactly what we said we would do. And this is the bluest state in America, and a Republican governor turned it around.
Now, there's some things you can't get done when you've got a Democratic legislature. I am curious if you were able to shrink the number of bodies in the government, because I think the next Republican have got to come in and promise to shrink the physical number of employees at the federal level. Were you able to do that in Maryland?
We were. We through attrition, we didn't lay anyone off, but as jobs became open, we didn't fill them. And I think we're down more than 5,000 positions in state government, which is also one of the things that we said we were going to do. We shrunk the size of the government, and we grew the size of the economy, and we shrunk the taxes quite a bit, but we grew the jobs.
Now, the one thing I'm pretty sure you couldn't get done is school choice because the teachers' unions own your legislature. What would you do if you had a magic wand for Maryland schools?
Well, first of all, we did get a small version, not nearly what we wanted to accomplish on school choice, because you're right, the teachers union very much controls our legislature, and I couldn't do it without passing it through the legislature. But we did enact a program to provide scholarships for deserving, needy children so that they could attend the school of their choice, and we got about 15,000 students that were in persistently failing schools and got them the opportunity to have a real opportunity at a great education. And but yet we wanted more school choice, but we actually did enact it a couple of years in a row in small bites that the teachers union fought against.